What's up, YouTube? Steve P here. I'm back from my respite. Been a while, but now we're going to start getting content on YouTube rolling a lot more. Doing some weekly NFL videos, and then once Hoops gets here, be here before you know it. It's about 4 weeks away from the NBA. We're going to be pumping out a lot of NBA content. But what better time than to get back into it than for the Ryder Cup, one of the best betting events of the year. We ended up really crushing it back in 2023, and I have a lot to say on it for this year, so let's get right into it. This year, the Ryder Cup's back on American soil, and this is the closest matchup that we've had in years. Europe comes in as the defending champions after that absolute demolition job in Rome, but Bethpage Black, that's a completely different animal. I've got some takes and some betting angles that'll hopefully make you some money this weekend, so let's get right into it. So we're about 12 hours out from the most anticipated Ryder Cup in recent memory at Bethpage Black. The Europeans come in riding a high after that 16.5 to 11.5 beatdown back in 2023. But here's the thing. It's just so rare for road teams to win Ryder Cups anymore. The last time that Europe won on American soil was back in 2012, the Miracle at Medina. And before that, you have to go all the way back to 1987. Now, yes, you can argue that this European team probably has the best chance to do it of any team in recent memory. They've got the continuity. They've got the form. They have Rory, the second best player in the world, playing the best golf of his career. And, meanwhile, Team USA is 4 rookies, and the roster does have some serious question marks. So who's going to win this thing? Let's break it down. So first, let's quickly talk about Bethpage Black. This place is going to be an absolute cauldron. If you've never experienced New York golf fans, think the Phoenix Open on steroids. The crowd is going to be loud, and historically, that does matter. Now, obviously, the crowd has to stay quiet when the Euros are hitting their shots, but the energy from the home crowd in a Ryder Cup is without a doubt a tremendous advantage, and it's honestly why the home teams have historically had such pristine records. Now, the course setup does heavily favor long, accurate drivers, which does play into the Europeans' hands, but here's what the Europeans can't replicate: the course knowledge. Cameron Young grew up 50 miles from Bethpage Black, and he won the New York State Open on this exact track as an amateur, firing a course 64 record in the final round. And a lot of the other Americans have a lot of history here. Justin Thomas played here multiple times during major championships and PGA Tour events. Patrick Cantlay competed in both the 2012 and 2016 Barclays here for the Tour Championship. Colin Morikawa played in the 2019 PGA Championship, where Brooks Koepka set the current course record. And even some of the rookies have experience, like several team members played in various New York State events and regional tournaments on this course over the years. So I do think that the local knowledge can be massive in team play. Knowing where the trouble spots are, understanding how the course plays in different wind conditions, and having that comfort level that just comes with familiarity. By and large, most of Europeans' team is going to be seeing this course for essentially the first time, especially under this type of pressure. So between this course, inside information, if you will, and home course advantage, the U.S. does have the advantage here. There's no question about that. But now let's look into the teams themselves. We'll start with Team USA because this roster does have some questions. Captain Keegan Bradley, he made some bold picks, and honestly, I'm not sure I agree with all of them. We'll start with the automatic qualifiers: Scotty Scheffler, Xander, J.J. Spaun, the U.S. Open champion, Russell Henley, Harris English, and Bryson. That's rock solid. But the captain picks are where things got a little bit interesting. Justin Thomas got the nod. He had a fine season, but I think his 7-4-2 Ryder Cup record is what got him in. Plus, with Keegan deciding not to play, the U.S. definitely needs some juice, and JT certainly provides that. The pick I didn't love was Colin Morikawa. who's been struggling with form to say the least. And while Patrick Cantlay's been money in past Ryder Cups at 5-2-1, he hasn't won on tour in 3 years. Now, he did play much better towards the end of the season, and he played well in the playoff, but still a guy who I would have preferred Keegan over both of them. The wild cards, though, are what intrigue me the most. Ben Griffin, who, I've famously been high on ever since his rookie year, and obviously the hometown kid, Cam Young. Griffin has played at an elite level this year, 2 wins, and Young, finally got his elusive win, and, that local kid flavor can definitely be this team's secret weapon if Bradley can find a way to use him right. But here's my concern. It's 4 rookies in a Ryder Cup team. That's a lot. And Europe brings back massive continuity. They're essentially bringing back the exact core outside of one player that dominated it in Rome. So moving on to Europe, this might be the strongest road team that they've ever assembled. Luke Donald's back as captain, and he's as I said, he's bringing back essentially the same squad that crushed the Americans in Rome 2 years ago. Literally the only difference is that Nikolai Højgaard is replaced by his twin brother Rasmus. The automatic qualifiers are stacked. Rory, who's having arguably the best season of his career, 4 wins, including the Masters for the career Grand Slam. Tommy Fleetwood's been Mr. Consistent, and he finally got his own elusive, albeit inevitable, win. You got Robert McIntyre, Scottish Bulldog, and John Rahm and Hatton. Say what you will about the LIV, but their talent level can't be denied. And Justin Rose is proving that age is just a number. Aberg is elite. Shane Larry, despite his current poor form, brings that major championship experience. And Matt Fitzpatrick, despite his rough Ryder Cup record, is still one of the most clutch players in the world. And, the biggest thing is the European team is something the Americans don't. They've all been here before. Again, 11 of the 12 players were in Rome. And Europe has shown they have what it takes to win on the road. And I don't expect them to be overly intimidated by this hostile crowd. So, who is my pick to win? My head and the stats say that on paper, Europe has the slightly better team. These odds should probably, if you're strictly going off stats and going player to player, this is very close to a pick 'em. Europe has more experience, and they're playing with house money as underdogs. But when it comes to the Ryder Cup, there's oftentimes the intangibles that make the biggest difference. And my gut says there's something special brewing with this American team. Now, as a guy who's done extensive research studying psychology over the years, honestly, one of my favorite parts about betting on team sports specifically is the ability to delve deep into the psychological elements that may be overlooked by the market. And this is the X factor for the USA team in my book. Firstly, this team was absolutely humiliated in Rome. Losing 16.5, 11.5, that wasn't just a loss. That was a beatdown. These guys are all ultra competitive, and that they've been thinking about that for 2 years. They're not just playing for their country this week. They're playing for redemption. And if that wasn't enough, they're also playing for Keegan Bradley, a man who made the ultimate selfless sacrifice, choosing to remain captain rather than play. Keegan has always dreamed of playing in the Ryder Cup, and this year was his most deserving opportunity, not only to play for his country, but to play at Bethpage Black, a course where he spent countless hours during his college days at St. John's. This was his chance, his course, his time. Keegan could have easily picked himself as playing captain, and honestly, he should have picked himself based on his form. But instead, he made the most selfless decision in Ryder Cup history. He looked at that roster, looked at what was best for the Team USA, and said, "Not me, the team comes first." Just think about that for a second. Your childhood dream is right there, playing in the Ryder Cup, on a course that you know like the back of your hand, representing your country in the biggest team event in golf, and you give it up for the team. That kind of sacrifice does not go unnoticed in a locker room, to say the least. This isn't just about playing for their country anymore. This is about playing for a captain who literally gave up his dream so they could have theirs. This creates a must-win mentality that goes beyond pride, beyond patriotism. Team USA is now playing for Keegan Bradley, their beloved captain who made the ultimate sacrifice for the betterment of the team. Can you imagine the devastation if they let him down after what he gave up for them? When Keegan first made the decision not to play, I'll be honest, my initial gut reaction was to bet Europe. I thought, great. Now the Americans are missing one of their most fearless players on a team that has questionable winning spirit. But after thinking more about it, I did a complete 180, and I realized that this sacrifice is probably going to be the turning point. Now, don't get me wrong. Europe is coming in to compete their ass off without a doubt. But I truly do believe that the USA will be competing with everything they have and more to make sure that they reward Keegan for that sacrifice. Picture this. It's Sunday evening, and Scottie Scheffler sinks the winning putt. The first person he's going to hug isn't going to be his wife. It's not going to be his caddy. It's going to be Keegan Bradley. Because every player on that team knows what that man gave up for them to be there. I'll be honest. I have no idea how to quantify strokes gained for Keegan into a betting line. But I do know enough about the power of human emotion to know there's no world where I'm betting against a team that's playing with this much purpose and focus. If these guys have any heart, which I believe they do, they'll be playing through a refuse-to-lose mentality, and that's worth way more than any statistical edge that Team Europe may have on paper. That's the kind of emotional fuel that wins a Ryder Cup. And ultimately, that's why I bet on Team USA. Now let's talk matchups. There's no question that this USA squad is far better prepared than the team that they put out in Rome. I'm not going to go into everything, but Zach Johnson was a complete disaster from his picks to his roster construction to the lineups, and the team came out completely flat and were steamrolled. Keegan was exactly what Team USA needed for a fresh start, and I love how they went right back to the guy who's going to bring the most juice of anyone, and that's taking Bryson instead of Brooks. It goes without saying that their star man Scottie Scheffler is better than ever, the closest thing to Tiger that we've seen and probably will ever see. Meanwhile, if you look at European stars from 2023, Jon Rahm arrived in Rome as the Masters champion, and he was on fire. Now, he's a clear notch below that, to say the least, after leaving for LIV. Victor Hovland in 2023 just won the FedEx and was arguably the second best player in the world, if not the best. That form is a far cry from where he is now. Even Trail Hatton, who was lights out in Rome, has been inconsistent on LIV, and to be honest, I question all of these guys LIV guys, their competitive spirit. Did they lose a little bit of their edge going to LIV and playing on that circus? If the majors tell us anything, I believe so. Now, Team Europe does have the second best player in the event, in Rory McIlroy, who's, I think, going to be excellent. But the rest of the supporting cast around him has declined, while the American team has improved. I think this is going to be a razor-close Ryder Cup, one of the best, potentially, of all time. But I think the U.S. edges them out 14.5 to 13.5, and it's going to come down to Sunday singles. But between the psychological edge, the home crowd, and the improved roster construction, I do think America barely gets it done. So now let's get into what you came here for, the actual bets. My best bet of the week is Scottie Scheffler over 2.5 points. This line is juiced to the over. It's minus 145 on FanDuel. On the sharper offshores, it's closer to minus 175, which is a lot closer to what I make fair, to be honest. Now, why is this line only 2.5 when Scotty Scheffler is without a doubt the best player in the world, and he's, plus 200, or he was just plus 200 to win the Pro Cure? I think a lot of it's because of how he underperformed in Rome. He went 0-2-2, and that's why this number is sitting at 2.5 instead of 3.5. But that Rome performance was an outlier. He's currently the best player in the world by a mile now, and he dialed in his putting. And he's going to be in Bradley's plans in at least 4 out of the 5 sessions minimally. And why I really like this, which we already saw, is that Luke Donald is going to put the quote-unquote sacrificial lambs out against Scotty. I mean, do you think he's really going to waste Rory or Rahm in a head-to-head against world number 1? No chance. So I expect to see guys like Justin Rose or Matt Fitzpatrick getting fed to the Scotty buzzsaw, while Donald saves the big guns for more favorable matchups. So that's going to mean Scotty's going to get soft opposition while playing maximum sessions. A perfect formula for getting over 2.5 wins. And at this course, with these conditions, they're setting it up for Scotty to dominate. Honestly, I think him going 5-0 or him going 5-0 at 18-1 is worth a sprinkle. But there is a better way to attack that market, which I discussed in my Discord. I'm not going to get into that now. Bet number 2, Scotty Scheffler, top USA point scorer. Now again, if I like him to get over 2.5 points, do I think 2.5 is going to be enough to be the U.S. point leader? Probably not. But I think, as I said above, if I like him to go 5-0, well, then obviously I like him to be the top USA point scorer. He's going to play the most. He's the most talented. And you better believe he's got a chip on his shoulder from Rome. But again, Keegan Bradley knows that he is a nuclear weapon in Scotty, so he's going to deploy him wisely. And that means putting him up against Europe's weaker players while saving guys like Bryson and Xander for the tougher matchups. So while Bryson may grab the headlines, with his antics, Scotty's going to quietly put up 3.5 to 4 points minimally against hand-picked opponents. And I truly believe he leads this American charge. Value play that I like is Russell Henley, top rookie at plus 125. I know that Cameron Young is the trendy pick here because of the local connection, but I'm looking at Russell Henley in this market. Henley's been absolutely dialed in. He's the 4th ranked player in the world right now, won the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and he hasn't missed a cut since mid-May. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone coming with better form than Henley. And potentially most importantly, he's got that partnership chemistry with Scotty from the President's Cup. As we saw, he's going out with Scotty in the opening round. And I think once that's successful, that's going to continue. So Henley playing with Scotty, that should equate to quite a few points. Now, Young may get 1 or 2 sessions, but I expect Henley to be in Bradley's plans for 4 sessions. So give me the consistent grinder over the local hero story. Moving on to our third bet, I'm going to take Rory McIlroy, top European point scorer at plus 455. I like Rory for a lot of the same reasons that I like Scotty. Rory is without a doubt Europe's best player in the best current form, and he's going to play in 4 or maybe even all 5 sessions. He's the heart and soul of the European team, and I expect Luke Donald to lean on him very heavily. And again, here's the beautiful part. Similar to what Keegan Bradley's going to do, or Keegan Bradley's going to do the same thing that Donald does with Scotty. I mean, you think Bradley's going to waste Scheffler or Bryson going head to head with Rory? No way. He's going to throw guys like Sam Burns or Ben Griffin at him. 2 solid players, but far from his best weapons. So that's going to mean Rory's going to get favorable matchups while accumulating maximum volume. And at plus 455, you're getting great odds on the guy who's going to see the most action for the Europeans and the game to deliver against the weaker Americans. One long shot that I like, JJ Spawn or Russell Henley to make the winning putt at plus 1,600 each. So if this comes down to Saturday singles, or Sunday singles rather, which I think it will, Bradley's going to put out his steady guys late. So, both Spawn and Henley are grinders who have proven that they can thrive under pressure. And, having either of them sink the winning putt at 16-1 odds That's definitely a lottery ticket worth throwing some pizza money on for some fun. So, bottom line, this Ryder Cup has all the ingredients to be an absolute classic. Two evenly matched teams, a hostile crowd, demanding course, and everything on the line. My money's on Team USA pulling this out by the slim of the margins behind a dominant Scotty Scheffler week and a Bethpage crowd that's reaching decibel levels that would even make a Seahawks home game jealous. So if you're interested in getting all my picks, the link to the Discord's below. All of my plays are posted in there already, and I'll be dropping any additional bets throughout the week as the opportunity arises. But bet responsibly, have fun, enjoy it, and go USA. Let's bring that cup back home.